Just covering the webinar structure here, guys. So we're going to have a panel discussion. It won't be a presentation. So it will be like a ping pong discussion of landscape, what you guys are facing, challenges, and maybe we can help and have a further discussion later on. We're going to have a quick quiz in which we call a brain teaser at the end. And whoever gets the most right questions will get a merch pack from Leader. Colin is going to send out soon. We're going to share some success stories as well. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy that. So I'm just going to pass it quickly to David so he can cover quickly Acronis in a few seconds.
Yep, thanks, Caesar. Just to say good day, everybody. Thanks for joining, really appreciate it. So a very quick sort of background in terms of context about Acronis, who we are and why we're having this discussion today. Many people know Acronis from way back in our grandfather's time with imaging software, but we've absolutely transformed, maybe since around 2017, around about that time, transformed into a total cyber protection company for managed service providers. And what we are as a company, we are dual headquartered in Switzerland and Singapore, founded in Singapore with international headquarters in Switzerland. And that's kind of important just to mention, because it's certainly from a personal perspective here in Australia, we've found it very good to have a centre of gravity within our time zone. Has been very, very effective. So that's who we are. We're a global reach company focused on cyber protection for service providers. And as you can see on the slide there, we've got data centres across the world with one here in Sydney, and there is also one in Auckland, but that's actually a very good point just to make here. They are geofenced, so basically data doesn't leak from one to the other. So when you save data to the Acronis cloud in Sydney, or you do any data processing in Sydney, it stays here in Australia. It never goes abroad. So that gives you a sense of the reach and scale of who we are. So thanks very much, Caesar. Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Guys, a bit of interaction now. I'm going to ask you to ask the question here because we want to understand our audience today. I see some common names here, but a few of you guys I've never spoken to before, which is quite nice to see. So Colin's just released a poll here on your current stage as in the business. So break and fix, you're in the growth phase, maybe you're in a value-added reseller, or you're thinking about transitioning to the MSP model. Let's go in a few seconds. Cool. Next one. I want to kind of get David's opinion here because he's been in the market forever, and maybe for a general overview of the current IT landscape for Australian small businesses, Australian MSPs, maybe mention a bit of essential aid and the frameworks, cybersecurity posture, maturity level, just a general overview, David, from you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is this: what we see in Acronis here in Australia, there's two very large external factors in the market, which is absolutely influencing everyone at the moment. First one is the profile of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has very much gone to the forefront of everyone's mind, given some of the very high-profile breaches there were last year and continuing to this year. It's worth mentioning. Those of you who are familiar, obviously, you know who I'm talking about here. The large cyber breaches that happened. Interestingly, nothing that happened in them technically was new, but it was the scale of them that put it to the top of the agenda. So what happened was, obviously, large amounts of data from millions of customers were leaked. That got onto the 7 o'clock news. 7 o'clock news gets onto the politicians' agenda. So it's become very much that's very much framed how the market's being driven then about awareness of cybersecurity, which, to be honest, is probably a good thing. We could have done with a bit of a wake-up call. So that's one thing, is awareness of cybersecurity. The other thing, and this, again, it's outside of IT, is the economic environment that we're operating in. Belts are getting tightened. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You walk down High Street, there's a lot of closed shops. So what we're finding is end users are spending less. So we've got these conflicting forces of we need to be more secure, and we've got less money to do it with. So it's operating within that environment that what we're seeing is then a trend towards, okay, how do we do more with less? How do we become more secure? How do we meet things like, as Caesar says, stuff like essentially, how do we become more secure without bankrupting ourselves? And part of this is when we're dealing with, as you can see there on the screen, things like a complex environment, how do we enable administrators to manage complex environments and manage cybersecurity? Because one of these things, there's not a lot of cybersecurity experts out there. So what can we do as a technology provider to enable ordinary administrators to then become expert security? So we need to, this is what we're aiming for. So it's reduce that complexity. And then when we're talking about expansion, you can have multiple vendors and multiple tools to do a job, but if you can, what we see here at Acronis is if you rationalize that, you basically reduce your costs and become more secure. It's actually a very sweet spot to be in. And also this idea of there's a lot of platforms out there that you do need to secure, and especially the working from home trend that happened during COVID certainly highlighted this, where you've got this distributed IT going on, people working from home, people working from the beach, from the cafe, all of that. So it's basically how do we maintain that in a secure method going forward without having to reinvent the wheel? That's really what we're kind of looking at. So these are probably the big trends I've seen. Yeah, as I say, we need to be more secure, spend less money on it, while the environment has changed.
That's perfect. No, that's perfect. And yeah, I think finding that sweet spot and finding equilibrium and efficiencies and still making sure they're compliant with the current trends. Just going back to the poll, we have 44 plus 19 as an MSP. So right audience here, and 25 break and fix and 13% value added resellers. Thanks for responding, guys. There's another one here. Colin, please. Poll number 2, how many vendors do you have in your stack? That goes back to what David said about finding your efficiency, the sweet spot between being protected but not causing a lot of overhead in the systems, especially assuming that our audience here might have limited resources. We're not talking about 1,000 seats MSPs. So just gonna, yep, 3 to 6, 36%, 6 to 10, 36%, and 10 more, 9%. Right, thanks guys. Yeah. Look, some statistics here. 64% of companies, at least one cyber threat in 2022. And this is very relevant because we often hear that, nah, this is not going to affect me because I'm very small, which is not true. Like 40% of those in small businesses. Quickly share with you, side note, that one of our partners here, they were a victim. One of the sites, there are 3 sites, and one of them, the only one that they haven't implemented those services that we're gonna cover in a second, they got breached for $160,000, and it's not big at all. It's just a real estate firm. And as a result of that, of the high number of vendors, I guess something that we experience is that MSPs are managing too many tools and overhead. So 69 of MSPs' time is spent managing tools. So related to your reality here, very little time is spent on revenue generating tasks. So what are you doing for your sales? What are you doing for business development? Creating those relationships, right, David?
Yep, that's exactly it. And it's one of these things, you know, it's that pervasive we don't even notice it. One of the things, you could probably see the references down at the bottom of the screen there. One of them is the Acronis cybersecurity, the cyber threats report. We've actually got a 2023 version out at the moment, and what that shows is overwhelmingly the largest vector of attack that organizations face is through email, and we've become that used to it. You get phishing emails every day, so people are probing the boundaries on a daily basis, and it's a numbers game. Eventually, one of them will land. and someone will click on something that they're not supposed to. So we absolutely see this, and part of it is as well. So basically, the only people who are really at risk are people who have email, so i.e. everybody. And what this means is as well, the tools that you have behind that to basically stop the threat and how you manage it and how people interact with it. It's one of these things you don't want to be overly complicated in solving. But yeah, that's absolutely what we're seeing in 2023 and beyond. And if we get a chance, Caesar, we'll have a chat as well about how this is actually morphed in 2023. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no, awesome. Now you mentioned email, and email was the target of that attack I mentioned for 160K. So yeah, yeah, let's go next. Like, I think once again finding the sweet spot between increasing cybersecurity posture and minimizing overheads. Efficiency is the end goal for you guys. Can't run away from it. And going back to that breach, different actors are impacted, right? So it's not only the end customer, not only the end user, the MSP. Now there's different actors now, cybersecurity insurance companies, and also spread across different verticals: education, public, medical, government. You wanna add something here, David?
Yeah, look, there's probably a couple of things to mention there. If you look at our friend there on the right hand side with his mask on there, he's actually making a very good point. When we look at the types of attack that happen, you get different attacks more common in different countries. So what we've seen more prevalent here in Australia has been the likes of, you can see there, BEC, business email compromise. And the reason being, very similar to what Caesar's just mentioned there, is we are by nature high value targets in Australia. When someone does a real estate transaction, you're generally talking $1 million is the average sort of thing. There's a lot of money changing hands. And remember, cyber criminals are a business. They have a profit and loss sheet. And so what we see is these sophisticated attacks focusing on countries like Australia, less sophisticated attacks for lower reward targets. So we're absolutely seeing this. And another thing that we're seeing is, as Caesar says, you could be compromised in other ways that you're not even aware of. So this is people who have managed to capture details from your environment, which are then convincing enough. They put together a picture that they contact your bank and change your phone number. And your phone number is then used for 2FA, that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of a mesh in a web. And if you can secure sort of the main vectors of attack, i.e. email, for example, that makes the follow-on security so much tighter as well. But yeah, basically the point is there's a real interconnectedness about the security. So yeah, let's carry on, Caesar.
Yeah, that's perfect. I just want to add that what you said there is perfect, because what happened to that 160K attack was exactly that. It was a failure on the application control via Intune policies, which generated one breach, and another one on the email. And then with the right, if all the stars align, that's when it happens. And as you said, it's a numbers game.
Yeah, they only have to align once, and they go home with $1 million.
Yeah,
they then close
correct.
the operation and start up again somewhere else. They just go to ground. So yeah, absolutely, it's a high reward.
Just going back to the third question, what is your biggest challenge? 18% responded margins and billing, 9% integrations, 23% support, 14% training and skill sets, and 36% all of the above. Go next. Right. Oh, that's the same question. Sorry, all right. No, cool. So now we're going more into the offering.
Caesar.
Yep.
I just want to check with the audience that they are still going well with the content so far. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand.
Yeah, you can raise your hand, guys. That's true. Yep.
Yep. So I can unmute you, or you can always drop the question in the chat, and we'll come back to that.
Thanks, Colin. Yeah, now we can quickly cover how you can overcome, because we know there is a problem in the market. You may have gaps, or you may have some improvement points. Just want to quickly cover how. So a few points here which are relevant. Risk reduction, expand your capabilities. Like a lot of you guys are value added or break and fix, so why not expand, you know? Differentiation against your competitors. And of course, here's one agent, one console, one vendor, which we'll cover in a second. And by including and expanding your capabilities, I guess it's a no-brainer that you will have less and lower churn rates. And I guess as an end goal, by increasing your cybersecurity posture, is reduce downtime and prevent data loss and all those breaches that we just discussed, right, David?
Yep, absolutely. So look, there's a lot going on there. So I'm not going to go through them too systematic. I'll probably just cherry pick a couple which are probably most relevant. Again, reducing risk reduction and protection. Yes, absolutely. That's kind of one of the that's a given. That's table stakes. So we are talking stuff like if you're adopting a framework like Essential 8, which is probably the most common that we see in Australia. If you're adopting Essential 8 framework, how do you do that cost effectively, and how do you do it in a way you understand? Because again, in itself, you don't want to tie yourself up too much by doing tick box exercises. You need to be focused on the outcomes. How are we increasing the security for customers? And also kind of related to that, this expansion of capabilities. We'll in a couple of moments we'll have a look at what the actual breadth of technology stacks and vectors that we're talking about here. But there is a concept of what you would call adjacency, and this actually touches a few of the points here. And adjacency would be something like you have a customer who has Microsoft 365, right? That's the majority in Australia probably. They've got Microsoft 365. They want to do backups. They want to do backups for a very good reason. Fantastic. And you're providing that as a service. It's then very easy to pivot and say, well, we can do the backups. We can also offer email security for your 365 environment. So you are not sort of branching into protecting laptops or anything like that. You're staying in the 365 domain. Then you can go beyond that and say, okay, we've done your email. We can now protect your collaboration platforms, you know, like OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, that sort of thing. So it makes it a very organic growth to expand your portfolio. So, and I know we're going to be we're talking a little while about bundles, but that's basically the idea. It then becomes easy to expand your capabilities, and you're not teaching an old dog new tricks. Essentially,
Yep.
You are using the same platform to expand out. So this is the platform itself. This is what we do in Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud. You can see it's very, very broad, and you can break these down into domains like, you know, backup, which we were famous for. Security, so likes of antivirus, anti-malware, endpoint detection, response, data loss prevention. We also have management, so whether that's you know, endpoint management and using AI to monitor device health and early indicators of compromise. Also patch management, things like this, vulnerability assessment. There's remote access as well. So there's a whole gamut, and what we find is that aligns very closely to something like Essential 8. Because to get back to kind of the point that the Caesar was making right at the beginning of the call, we're looking for simplicity. So what we're aiming for is, how do we make beginning to end cybersecurity, how do we make it effective and easy? So this is one of the things that if you want to take a deeper dive, probably on a later call, we can go into details of how do we protect from cyber attacks in the before phase, the during, and the after, and how that all aligns up. But also, equally, we operate in the real world. That's the technology component. In the real world, how this then interacts with the partner ecosystem and what Leader brings. So maybe, Caesar, you'd like to talk a little bit about that?
No, yeah, sure. So I like putting this slide here, guys, because it also gives you the perspective from the end user, from the end customer. So there's a lot of different actors here. So Leader plays a big role. I will play a big role if this is something that you want to do with us, because yeah, supporting, helping you guys with licensing questions, quoting, and then we also have other players here. We have Microsoft, which is you guys need to do it. I hope and I assume every one of you do that already. Then you've got yourselves as the managed service providers, but also something we're going to cover in a second is your current vendors, because even though Acronis is a vendor that does a lot, it's not trying to do everything itself. Like if you have your own RMM, your own PSA, it has the ability to integrate that with with a low to no code. And if you have the technical resources, you can do that as well. So this is just a nice slide to show you that the end customer has a lot above them. So going next. So it is built for service providers, as we mentioned before. I think that's it's obvious now. And this is just quickly what you get. Just a quick glance of what you get from the console. As you can see, there's widgets which you can customize. There's hyperlinks for you to go to a specific action, which is very nice when you're just learning how to use the platform. Easy to navigate, graphic interface. It's all multi-tenancy. So you see there on the very, I'm just gonna get the pointer here, the clients tab. Every workload for all the clients they manage within the console will be done in one place only. In terms of operations, who's gonna do what? You can have as many agents as you want. So it's not charged per agents. If you want to differentiate yourself and get your own custom branding, you can do that as well. Brand the agent, brand the domain, brand the URL, brand the logo here so that your customer can see it. So there's a lot here. Just want to give you a quick overview. Of course, there's much more to it. And of course, licensing is straightforward. It's just pay for what you use. That's the modular approach of turning on and off the services that you need or you don't need. Now, question number 4. Just want to cover something a bit more provocative. What is your current strategy for your disaster recovery plan? So option A, you don't have any daily backups. Backups are not needed because it's already in the cloud, maybe. Daily backups locally only, daily cloud and local backups, or maybe a 3-to-1 approach. 3 copies of your data, 2 copies, and 2 different media, and one of them off-site. All right. And this one as well. Are you using any endpoint detection and response, also known as EDR? And if so, which vendor? If you don't offer that at all, only traditional AV and malware, or those vendors there. Just want to kind of get to know better our audience here. Anything to comment on those questions here, David? Just to kind of
yeah, look, that's a good point. Just because when we're talking about cybersecurity, it is important to also mention backup. It's a critical component of it. And as I was mentioning earlier about breaking a cyber attack into before, during, and after, backup is obviously before, recovery is after, but then there's that middle section about during. So having that ability to validate a backup, test it, spin it up, does this boot, does this work, scan it for malware. Again, because we've got the integrated approach, we can scan backups for malware in the cloud quite happily. So it sort of jigsaws in that backup becomes a critical slice of your cybersecurity posture.
Yep. Now I think it goes back to your word for adjacency. So now I think you can go a bit deeper on each one of the modules here and how they all interact with each other. So it's not something standalone that you get a license and forget about it. Something that you're always going to be reviewing. And as you said before, I really like that term for organic growth.
Yep, absolutely. So just a little bit about this, of what's going on. You could call this the igloo. I know we're not supposed to have favorite slides, but I find this one useful because it covers everything in one go. It is a bit of an eye chart, but it's worth leaning into your monitor and having a look. What we've got is a distributed agent architecture. So one agent does all of this. One agent that has the control plane is agent to cloud. Data plane is agent to either local or cloud or both simultaneously, wherever you want to put it. Now, importantly, what you can then do is where you can install an agent, you're off and running, or if it's something as a service like Microsoft 365, we're talking an API because you can't install an agent there, but you use an API. And what happens is you get your main pillars of security management and backup. These fit into your holistic cyber protection stance. And exactly as Caesar says, just about adjacency, you can start this journey in any way. You can find, we have a customer who has a compelling reason to do backups. We have a customer who has a compelling reason for security. So what we find is, as I say, Microsoft 365, great example. You can start with the backups and say, right, we'll expand out and do email security there on the left-hand side. We can do email security, or we can then, and we can add to that with collaboration tools expansion as well. So you're talking, OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, security around that. That's a nice, easy one for organizations who are cloud-focused and on the 365 environment. Absolutely. Now, equally, you can do adjacency with the likes of security. So you've got your standard anti-malware, antivirus. Now, what we do is we are modular. We play nice with other vendors. But if you use the Acronis antivirus and security, you can then expand that out into the likes of our endpoint detection and response. Now, where we differentiate in our approach to EDR is because we have linkages to security and backup and patch management. All of these strata we interact with. That means your EDR platform can actually mitigate threats and then remediate them. So it's a case of, imagine you get a cyber attack, we can immediately isolate a machine, quarantine the threat, then analyze, EDR, what it does is it looks at various strands of evidence, builds up a body of evidence, say, this is what the intention of the attack was, and we can now mitigate this with patching this system or recovering from backup. We are able to analyze what files have been changed maybe during an attack with registry items, and then we can recover all of them in a single click, single console approach. Really, really very powerful way. I mean, the likes of EDR really comes into its own when you've got these strands that you can tie together. So that's kind of gives you a sense of it. And also it is modular. It's not a case of you need to take everything, all or nothing. We as I say, we do play nicely with other. If you're using other platforms, we live in a real world as a service provider. As we just found out in the poll there, we've got multiple tools, so that ability to interact and not conflict is absolutely is a core part of the service provider ecosystem. So
awesome.
Yep.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think after showing you the Igloo, guys, there might be some questions in your mind. Oh, okay, but how do I go to market with this? So the next slide, I'm going to show you something that I developed just by talking day-to-day basis with partners. Okay, so after I onboard on the platform, how do I go to market? How do I productize? How do I create my own offerings? So this is it. So a few ideas here. You guys know that we are a Microsoft house, right? So maybe every license that you get with Leader and resell it to your clients, just bundle it for Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint backup and security maybe, or maybe the both, right? Or maybe even email security. So a few ideas here just with Microsoft. You don't need to go reinvent the wheel. If you're a guy that buys a lot of Lenovo workstations or your Dells or any workstation from your account manager here at Leader, it's something that you could combine as your daily backups here, bare metal recovery, ransomware protection, and maybe even EDR. So that's another option here for your end users' devices. If you're a guy that manages a lot of servers, hosts, VMs, same idea, backup, maybe expand to DR in the cloud, locally, on-site appliance, ransomware protection, and disaster recovery. So there's a lot to cover. And my role here at Leader is to facilitate that learning curve for you, because you're going to come from here, and I want you guys to be here in this stage here, where you go to market with your ready to offer packages. Just going further, as I said, all the offerings are here. It's a backup to data loss prevention. And then once again, it's a modular approach, play nice with other vendors, can turn it off or on, and it talks to all these components here. and these are the things that you can offer. Just some ideas. Now, I want to share like a real business case here with you guys, which covers a lot, but it's a nice real life example of something that can happen to you guys. So just quickly, medical clinic, 3 branches, a lot of data. And here's an event that happened with them that they couldn't finish their sessions. They couldn't take any other patients, only cash. And a difference and a comparison between recovering from a backup, which would take a lot of time, against having a proper disaster recovery plan. So I'm just going to ask your thoughts here, David, because there's a lot of information in this slide. I think it's nice to share that with them.
Yep, no, absolutely. I think one of the key takeaways here is around disaster recovery. Is disaster recovery used to be for the big end of town. It was banks, government, that sort of thing. The reason being, and I've got personal experience of this, it was expensive, it was difficult, you needed specialists, you spent your weekends setting up disaster recovery and then testing it, and then if it ever happened, you crossed your fingers and hoped it would all work. What has happened is that has democratized. It has reached down into the realms of ordinary human beings now. And this kind of mirrors what we've also seen with cyber attacks, focused cyber attacks, likes of advanced persistent threats that used to be focused on the big end of town as well. They have come down the food chain. It's your small and medium business are very much a focus of cyber criminals now. So the ability to have disaster recovery, it needed to become A, simpler, B, cheaper, and C, just work, if you know what I mean. So what happened was, what we do with Acronis is we integrate these various strands. We take a backup and run it and you can spin that backup in the Acronis cloud on our systems within minutes. You're talking a couple of minutes to spin up a server and go. Now, where that's all very well and good, but as you know, the world is slightly more complicated than that. Other things that are also baked in there is, well, what does network connectivity look like to get back to where the clinicians are? Are they in a clinic? Are they at home? What are they doing? Who needs access to this data? So that ability to have your disaster recovery systems accessible easily is critically important, and you don't need to be a network engineer to redesign it and then test that, because a lot of the time disaster recovery was testing the network, never mind the systems. So that's all automated. The next thing that's automated is testing your DR systems on a monthly basis. Do they actually boot? Do they work? Automating them in terms of runbooks. Again, if there's interdependencies, how do we test them? And then lastly is looking for things like scanning your disaster recovery systems for malware, because we integrate antivirus and backups. What we're able to do is, like, if in this clinic's example, if they were brought down by malware, by ransomware, we can instantly look at where that malware is visible in any of the backups, and then we can either A, restore and clean it and fix that, or B, just run from a clean known copy and off we go. So that's the idea, is like you want to recover quickly, but you also want to recover cleanly and effectively, all the while removing the complexity to it. So absolutely, and also just to mention that about HIPAA compliance as well, just as specific to the medical profession. Yes, it's important that your disaster recovery system is the likes of HIPAA compliant, and it does offer the security that you would expect to see in a data center. So, for example, we're SOC 2 Tier 3 data center here in Sydney. You need to know that your disaster recovery systems are as secure as your primary production system. So that's another aspect that's rolled in and just baked in right at the outset. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Yeah, just going back to the question, which is very relevant to what you said here. 15% said I don't have any daily backups. Daily backups, daily cloud and local backups are done by 62%, and 23 of those do the 3-to-1 approach. And I guess the next slide here, guys, I want to share that with you, because all that David said sound very complex, even for us, maybe. But imagine that explaining all that to the client. So I guess sharing this slide here is relevant because you're going to be talking to end customers, which might not even know what a disaster recovery plan is. It's just got to work. I don't want my systems to be impacted. I can't afford to have the system down for, let's say, 1 hour, let alone 1 day. So this is what you get in terms of reporting. So this is clear return over the investment for you in a conversation with a client. Widgets, once again, you can extract everything from the system. You can be, David used this term before, which I really like. You can be informative, but not alarming. And I really like this one because it's highly customizable. You can schedule, helps with your operations. You can send it to them on a fortnightly, weekly basis if you want. And it gives you faster execution as well. If you know something is wrong, just click that button, hyperlink takes you to the right page for an action. It's simple as that. You don't need a uni degree to drive this console here. It's very, very easy. Now, are you using any endpoint detection? 31% traditional, and 25 with Sophos, 13 with Acronis, 13 with Microsoft. Okay, thank you.
So, anyone have any questions for David or Caesar? Please feel free to unmute yourself and interact with them, because this is we encourage you to get your answers, get your question answered by David, because you won't have this chance.
Getting while they're hot. So yes.
It's hard to catch, definitely.
You're all good.
Yeah. Actually,
oh yeah.
Yeah, do you have a deployable system if we want to do on-premises disaster recovery?
Oh, that's a good question. At a high level, the answer is yes, but the devil is always in the detail. You can do this various ways. So what we call disaster recovery in the cloud means that we've automated all the networking, we've automated the testing, and all of this, and automated the scanning for viruses. You can absolutely do local. You can have local images, and you can instantly boot them up to hypervisor. So that's an instant run as VM. That absolutely works, and because it's local, it will remove a lot of your network issues. There is also another alternative that's a bit more. It's a bit more niche, but there are some of the large service providers do this. Is you can run disaster recovery using what is essentially Acronis software on your own premises, called cyber infrastructure. That is possible, and you essentially end up running it's the Acronis hypervisors locally. My personal experience and what I've seen most commonly out there is if you are going to run a local disaster recovery, your best friend is to use either Hyper-V or ESX and do the instant restores. It's nice and easy, clean and neat and easy to work with. It does introduce other issues. Stuff like separation of who the clients are, so you end up with different clients on different hypervisors, which you can eliminate if you do it slightly differently. So as I say, the top answer is yes. Then it's a question of how do we want to architect it. But the easiest way is to do it in Acronis Cloud. That's all just taken care of then. So yes, yep, you can.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, David. Thanks, Edward. So just want to thank David, thank Colin, and thanks everyone that joined. That means a lot to me here. I try to make things right here and be close to you guys. The ones that have transacted with me before here for Acronis or Microsoft, try to be close to you guys. And just a call to action here, if you guys want a meeting just to understand a bit more your environment, how we can help you, we're available. And Edward, we're going to be sending out the March pack. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, everyone. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye for now.